What if one man's visions could predict the rise and fall of empires, the rebirth of a nation, and the hope of a world yet to come, all centuries before they happened? Meet Daniel, the prophet who walked through a den of lions, decoded dreams that baffled kings, and saw the future with a clarity that defies explanation. When he drew his final breath in ancient Persia, you might think his story ended. But what if I told you that the moment Daniel died, the world was set ablaze with events so astonishing? They proved his words were not just prophecies, but a divine blueprint for history itself. Buckle up, because you're about to uncover 7 jaw-dropping moments that unfolded instantly after his passing. Moments that will leave you questioning everything you thought you knew about the past. Daniel was no ordinary figure. Born into a noble Jewish family, he was torn from his homeland during the Babylonian exile, yet rose to become a trusted advisor to some of the most powerful rulers in history. From the glittering courts of Babylon to the marble halls of Persia, he served with unshakable faith, earning respect as a sage whose wisdom seemed to touch the divine. His visions, recorded in the book of Daniel, spoke of empires that would rise and crumble, a temple that would be restored, and a Messiah who would change the world. When he died around 85 years old in Susa, Persia, he left behind a sealed book of prophecies with a cryptic command: "Close the book until the time of the end." Daniel 12:4. What secrets lay hidden in those words? And what happened when his voice fell silent? In this journey, we'll uncover 7 events that shook the ancient world, each one a testament to the power of Daniel's God-given foresight. By the end of this video, you won't just hear a story. You'll gain a perspective that forever changes how you see history, faith, and the unseen hand guiding it all. From the restoration of a sacred temple to the rise of a world-shaking empire, these events reveal a truth that resonates even today. No matter how dark the times, there's a purpose unfolding beyond what we can see. You'll walk away with a renewed sense of wonder, inspired by a prophet whose words still echo in our modern world. But to fully grasp the magnitude of what's coming, you'll need to stick with me to the very end, because the final revelation will leave you speechless. If you're ready to embark on this epic journey through time, hit that like button to show your excitement, subscribe to the channel, and ring the bell so you never miss a story like this. Your support keeps these incredible tales alive, and I can't wait to share this one with you. Let's dive into the first of 7 shocking events that began the moment Daniel died. Trust me, you won't want to miss a second of what's coming. When the revered prophet Daniel drew his final breath in the ancient city of Susa, Persia, the world stood on the brink of a divine unfolding. This was no ordinary man. He had walked unscathed through a den of ravenous lions, unraveled dreams that left mighty kings trembling, and carried visions that seemed to pierce the very fabric of time. At around 85 years old, Daniel had served faithfully under the towering empires of Babylon and Persia, earning respect as a sage whose wisdom was matched only by his unyielding devotion to the God of Israel. His final words, etched in sacred scripture, were both a command and a mystery. Seal the words and close the book until the end of time. Daniel 12:4. What secrets lay hidden in those sealed words? What forces would be unleashed the moment his voice fell silent? The answers came swiftly as a cascade of events began to reshape nations, faiths, and the course of history itself. Let's dive into the first 2 astonishing moments that followed Daniel's death, moments that would prove his visions were no mere dreams, but a divine blueprint for the ages. In the twilight of his life, Daniel stood as a towering figure in a foreign land. Born into a noble Jewish family, he was taken captive as a youth during the Babylonian exile, a time when Jerusalem lay in ruins and hope seemed a distant memory. Yet through decades of service, he rose to become one of the most trusted advisors to kings like Nebuchadnezzar, Belshazzar, and Darius. His life was a testament to integrity. He never wavered in his faith, even when faced with death in the lion's den or the intrigues of jealous courtiers. By the time he reached Susa, the opulent capital of the Persian Empire under King Cyrus, Daniel was an elder statesman, revered not only by his fellow Jews, but also by Persian officials who marveled at his insight. His final recorded role was as one of 3 high administrators overseeing the vast Persian realm, a position of immense responsibility for a Hebrew exile. But Daniel's true legacy lay not in his earthly titles, but in the visions he received from God. Throughout his life, he recorded prophecies that spoke of empires rising and falling, of a Messiah to come, and of a final judgment that would shake the heavens. His book, sealed with the cryptic instruction to close it until the end of time, was a treasure trove of divine foresight. What did this mean? Was it a warning that the world wasn't ready for the full weight of his revelations? Or was it a promise that, at the appointed hour, his words would come alive with breathtaking precision? As Persian mourners prepared his body according to the customs of the time, few could have imagined that the prophet's death was not an end, but a beginning. The question lingered in the air. What secrets had Daniel left behind that would soon set the ancient world ablaze? To understand the magnitude of what followed, we must picture Susa in that moment, a bustling metropolis of marble palaces and sprawling markets, where news of Daniel's passing sent ripples through the Jewish exile community. For them, he was more than a prophet. He was a beacon of hope, a man who had seen God's hand at work even in the heart of exile. His death could have signaled despair, yet it marked the dawn of a new era. The first proof came in an event so monumental it would echo through the ages, fulfilling a prophecy Daniel had penned with unwavering faith. Imagine a people uprooted from their homeland, their temple reduced to rubble, their identity hanging by a thread. For nearly 7 decades, the Jewish exiles in Babylon and Persia had lived as strangers in a strange land, clinging to stories of Jerusalem's former glory. Daniel, in his later years, had turned to the ancient scrolls of the prophet Jeremiah, where he found a startling promise. The captivity of God's people would last 70 years, after which they would return to their land, Jeremiah 29:10. In the quiet of his chambers, Daniel prayed fervently, seeking God's will, and his writings in Daniel 9 reveal a vision of restoration, a time when the exiles would rebuild their city and their lives. Could such a dream become reality? The answer came sooner than anyone expected. Shortly after Daniel's death, King Cyrus of Persia, the conqueror who had toppled Babylon, issued a decree that shook the foundations of the ancient world. In a proclamation recorded in the book of Ezra, Cyrus declared, "The Lord, the God of heaven, has given me all the kingdoms of the earth, and he has appointed me to build a temple for him at Jerusalem and Judah. Any of his people among you may go up, and may the Lord their God be with them." Ezra 1-3. This was no ordinary edict, it was a divine intervention, orchestrated by the God Daniel had served. The Persian king, a man who worshipped foreign gods, became an unlikely instrument in the fulfillment of a Hebrew prophet's vision. But here's the astonishing twist. Daniel's writings suggest he knew Cyrus by name long before the king rose to power, a detail echoed in the prophecy of Isaiah, which calls Cyrus God's anointed, Isaiah 44:28. How could a Jewish exile foresee the actions of a Persian monarch decades in advance? The decree spread like wildfire through the Jewish communities scattered across Persia and Babylon. Families who had known only exile began to dream of a home they had never seen. Elders recounted tales of Jerusalem's golden walls, while children listened wide-eyed, imagining a land flowing with milk and honey. The journey back would be grueling, hundreds of miles across deserts and mountains, with no guarantee of safety. Yet the promise of return ignited a fire in their hearts. As they packed their belongings, many whispered Daniel's name, recalling his prayers and visions. Had he not foreseen this very moment? The precision of his prophecy was staggering. Not only had he predicted the timing of their release, but he had pinpointed the man who would set them free. Tens of thousands of exiles, led by figures like Sheshbazzar and later Zerubbabel, began the long trek to Judah. Their return was more than a homecoming. It was a testament to God's faithfulness, a living proof that Daniel's words were not mere hopes, but divine certainties. Yet this was only the beginning. The exiles' return set the stage for an even greater challenge, one that would test their resolve and bring another of Daniel's visions to life. The return to Jerusalem was a triumph, but the city the exiles found was a shadow of its former self. The once magnificent Temple of Solomon, a marvel of gold and cedar, lay in ruins, its stones scattered by Babylonian invaders. Daniel had foreseen a time when Jerusalem would rise again, not just as a city, but as a spiritual center for God's people. His prophecies spoke of a restored sanctuary, a place where the presence of God would dwell once more. But could a broken people rebuild what had been lost? The answer came through a struggle that would define their faith. Under the leadership of Zerubbabel, a descendant of Judah's kings, and with the encouragement of prophets like Haggai and Zechariah, the exiles set to work. The task was daunting. They lacked resources, manpower, and the wealth that had built Solomon's temple. Worse still, they faced fierce opposition from neighboring tribes, Samaritans and others who saw the Jewish resurgence as a threat. These adversaries mocked the builders, spread rumors, and even sent letters to the Persian court, urging the king to halt the project. One such letter, recorded in Ezra 4, falsely accused the Jews of plotting rebellion, nearly derailing the entire effort. The work ground to a halt, and despair crept into the hearts of the builders. Had Daniel's vision been a mirage? Yet in the face of these setbacks, the words of the prophet Haggai rang out. "Who of you is left who saw this house in its former glory? Does it not seem to you like nothing? But now be strong, for I am with you, declares the Lord Almighty." Haggai 2:3-4. These words echoed Daniel's unwavering faith, reminding the people that God's promises would not fail. Here's a detail that few know. When the Persian king Darius investigated the complaints, he discovered an ancient record of Cyrus's decree buried in the royal archives at Ecbatana. This forgotten document not only validated the Jews' right to rebuild, but ordered their enemies to provide supplies for the project. Ezra 6:6-12. Was this mere chance, or had Daniel's God orchestrated yet another miracle? Stone by stone, the temple began to rise. The work spanned over 2 decades, each layer a victory against doubt and opposition. When the final stone was laid in 516 BC, the people gathered in a ceremony of joy and tears. The new temple was modest compared to Solomon's. It lacked the dazzling splendor of old, but its significance was profound. Daniel had foreseen that this sanctuary would carry a glory greater than gold, for it symbolized God's enduring covenant with his people. The elders who remembered the first temple wept, not just for what was lost, but for the miracle of restoration before their eyes. How could a humble structure outshine the grandeur of the past? The answer lay in its purpose. This temple would stand as a beacon of hope, a testament to the God who keeps his word, just as Daniel had promised. As the priests lit the altar's fire and the songs of praise filled the air, the Jewish people stood at a crossroads. Daniel's prophecies had guided them home and rebuilt their sanctuary, but greater trials and triumphs lay ahead. The stage was set for a series of events that would test the limits of their faith and prove once again that the prophet's visions were a divine map for the future. The moment Daniel's voice fell silent in the ancient city of Susa, the world entered a new chapter, one scripted by the divine visions he had sealed centuries before. His prophecies, locked away for the time of the end, Daniel 12:4, were not mere musings, but a celestial roadmap, guiding history with a precision that defied human understanding. The Jewish exiles had returned to Jerusalem, their temple rebuilt against all odds. Yet these were only the opening acts of a grander drama. Empires would clash and crumble, a tyrant would unleash unspeakable horrors, and a people's faith would be forged in the fires of persecution, all foretold by a prophet whose legacy burned brighter than ever. How could one man's words wield such power over the tides of nations? The next 3 events following Daniel's death unveil a saga of conquest, betrayal, and resistance, each moment a testament to the unshakable truth of his visions. Prepare to be astonished as we uncover the rise and fall of empires and a darkness that nearly broke God's people, only to spark a rebellion that changed history forever. In the years following Daniel's death, the Persian Empire stood as an unassailable titan, its dominion stretching from the Nile to the Indus, its cities adorned with palaces of marble and gold. Under rulers like Cyrus and Darius, Persia was the pinnacle of power, its armies a terror to all who dared oppose it. Yet Daniel had glimpsed a fatal flaw in this colossus. In a vision recorded in Daniel 8, he saw a ram with 2 horns, symbolizing the United Kingdoms of Media and Persia, charging across the earth, unstoppable until a swift, ferocious force from the west shattered its might. Daniel 8:3-7. What could bring such a giant to its knees? The answer emerged in the form of a young Macedonian king whose ambition would redraw the map of the ancient world. Alexander the Great. By 331 BC, Alexander had already carved a path of conquest through Asia Minor, Egypt, and Mesopotamia. But the decisive blow came at the Battle of Gaugamela. Facing the Persian king Darius III, whose army dwarfed his own, Alexander unleashed a daring strategy. His phalanxes and cavalry struck with surgical precision, outmaneuvering the Persian forces and routing them in a matter of hours. Darius fled, leaving his empire in chaos. The great city of Persepolis, the heart of Persian glory, fell soon after, its treasures looted and its palaces set ablaze by Alexander's troops. Daniel's vision had described this moment with eerie clarity. A male goat came from the west, crossing the whole earth without touching the ground, and it had a prominent horn between its eyes. Daniel 8:5. The goat was Greece, the horn was Alexander, and the speed of his conquest was unlike anything the world had seen. But here's a revelation that will leave you speechless. As Greek soldiers sifted through the ashes of Persepolis, they uncovered scrolls in the royal archives, some bearing the name of a Hebrew prophet named Daniel. These writings, preserved by Persian scribes, foretold the collapse of their empire with details so precise, down to the direction of the attack, that even the Greeks, unfamiliar with Jewish scriptures, were left in awe. How could a man who died over 200 years earlier have known the exact moment when Persia's reign would end? Jewish communities in the region, hearing of these discoveries, gathered in hushed reverence, their voices trembling as they read Daniel's words aloud. Had he not warned of this very day? The fall of Persia was no mere military defeat. It was a divine pronouncement etched in the prophet's visions long before Alexander was born. The ripple effects were profound. Greek culture, its language, philosophy, and art, swept across the conquered lands in a tidal wave known as Hellenism, transforming everything from marketplaces to monarchies. Yet even as the world marveled at this new era, Daniel's prophecies hinted at a fracture in the Greek Empire, a division that would set the stage for another stunning fulfillment. Alexander the Great was a force of nature, a conqueror who forged an empire from Greece to India in less than a decade. At the height of his power, he seemed invincible, a living legend whose name inspired both fear and admiration. But Daniel had seen the limits of this legend. In his vision, the great horn of the goat, Alexander himself, would snap at the peak of its strength, and 4 prominent horns came up toward the 4 winds of heaven. Daniel 8:8. Could an empire so vast, built by a man who defied the gods, collapse in an instant? The answer came in 323 BC, when Alexander, at the tender age of 32, succumbed to a sudden fever in the palace of Nebuchadnezzar in Babylon. His death was a thunderbolt, leaving his empire leaderless and his generals scrambling for control. The aftermath was a blood-soaked struggle known as the Wars of the Diadochi, where Alexander's commanders turned on each other in a ruthless bid for power. Cities burned, alliances shattered, and families were torn apart as the empire fragmented. By the end of the conflict, 4 distinct kingdoms emerged, each ruled by one of Alexander's former generals. Cassander took Macedonia and Greece, Lysimachus claimed Thrace and parts of Asia Minor, Seleucus seized Syria and Babylon, and Ptolemy secured Egypt and Palestine. The division was not random. It matched Daniel's prophecy with surgical accuracy, as if the 4 winds of his vision had guided the hands of history. In Jerusalem, Jewish scribes pored over Daniel's writings, their hearts pounding as they traced the prophecy's fulfillment. They gathered in candlelit rooms, reading aloud the words of a man who had foreseen this chaos centuries before. How could a prophet, long gone, have predicted the precise splintering of an empire he never witnessed? The precision was undeniable, and it sent a wave of awe through the Jewish community. But there's a detail that adds an extra layer of intrigue. During this period, Jewish scholars in Alexandria, under Ptolemy's rule, began translating Hebrew scriptures into Greek, creating the Septuagint. Daniel's book was among the first to be translated, ensuring that his prophecies would reach far beyond the borders of Judea. Was this a mere scholarly effort, or had God ordained the spread of Daniel's words to prepare the world for what was to come? The division of Alexander's empire redrew the ancient world, placing the Jewish people at the crossroads of two rival powers, the Seleucids in the north and the Ptolemies in the south. The stage was set for a new chapter, one that would bring a tyrant unlike any other, and a persecution that would test the very soul of God's people. As the Greek kingdoms jostled for supremacy, Daniel's visions grew darker, foretelling a king of bold face, one who understands riddles, who would rise from the north and wreak havoc on the holy people. Daniel 8:23-24. This prophecy found its chilling fulfillment in 167 BC with the rise of Antiochus IV Epiphanes, a Seleucid king whose arrogance matched his cruelty. Calling himself Epiphanes, God manifest, Antiochus saw himself as a divine ruler, demanding worship from all his subjects. But the Jewish people, steadfast in their devotion to the one true God, refused to bend, igniting a conflict that would plunge them into a nightmare. Antiochus's assault on Jerusalem was nothing short of sacrilege. He stormed the city, looted the temple's sacred treasures, and committed an act so vile it scarred the Jewish soul. He erected an altar to Zeus in the holy sanctuary and sacrificed pigs on it, defiling the temple with what Daniel called the abomination that causes desolation. Daniel 11:31. His decrees were merciless. He banned circumcision, Sabbath observance, and the study of Torah, punishing violators with torture and death. Across Judea, families faced unimaginable choices: renounce their faith or die. Mothers were forced to watch their children executed for refusing to eat unclean food, while rabbis were burned alive for hiding sacred scrolls. The streets of Jerusalem, once filled with songs of worship, now echoed with cries of anguish. The pain was unbearable, yet it was exactly what Daniel had foreseen. His words warned of a king who would destroy the mighty and the holy people. Daniel 8:24. But they also carried a promise. This tyrant's power would be broken. In the face of such horror, a flicker of defiance emerged in the village of Modian, where a priest named Mattathias and his sons, led by Judas Maccabeus, sparked the Maccabean revolt. Armed with little more than faith, they waged a guerrilla war against Antiochus's armies, striking from the hills and rallying others to their cause. Here's a detail that will leave you astounded. As the Maccabees planned their rebellion, they distributed handwritten copies of Daniel's prophecies, reading them aloud to inspire their fighters. Verses like, "Some of the wise will stumble, so that they may be refined, purified, and made spotless until the time of the end," Daniel 11:35, became their battle cry, fueling their belief that God would deliver them. Could a prophet's words penned centuries earlier ignite a revolution that defied an empire? The Maccabean revolt was a turning point, proving that Daniel's visions were not just predictions, but a call to action. The Jewish people, battered but unbroken, stood on the brink of a miracle, one that would restore their temple and light a flame that burns to this day. The next chapter of Daniel's legacy was about to unfold, bringing hope from the ashes of despair. With the sealed words of Daniel echoing through the ages, the world continued to unfold according to his divine visions. The prophet, long gone from the courts of Susa, had left behind a legacy that burned like a beacon, guiding God's people through triumph and tribulation. The Jewish exiles had reclaimed their homeland, rebuilt their temple, and survived the horrors of a ruthless tyrant, all as Daniel had foretold. Yet his prophecies stretched far beyond these moments, reaching into the rise of new empires, the dawn of a messianic hope, and a legacy that resonates even in our modern world. How could one man's revelations hold such sway over the course of centuries? The final two events following Daniel's death, along with the enduring impact of his words, reveal a story of restoration, conquest, and an unyielding expectation that changed the world forever. Prepare to be captivated as we explore a miraculous purification, the rise of a fearsome empire, and a prophetic influence that still shapes our understanding of history's ultimate purpose. After years of darkness under Antiochus IV's reign of terror, The Jewish people stood battered but unbroken, their faith fueled by the words of Daniel. His vision had warned of the abomination that causes desolation, Daniel 11:31, but it also promised a turning point. For 2,300 evenings and mornings, then the sanctuary will be restored, Daniel 8:14. Could a defiled temple, desecrated by pagan altars and forbidden sacrifices, ever be made holy again? The answer came in 164 BC, when Judas Maccabeus, the fearless leader of the Maccabean revolt, achieved the impossible. After a series of daring victories against Antiochus's forces, Judas and his band of rebels stormed Jerusalem, reclaiming the city and setting their sights on the heart of their faith, the temple. The scene they found was heartbreaking. The temple courts, once alive with prayers and offerings, were littered with debris, the altar of Zeus standing as a mocking monument to their suffering. Yet Judas rallied his people with a resolve born of prophecy. They tore down the pagan altar, cleansed the sanctuary with ritual precision, and rebuilt the sacred furnishings according to the law of Moses. On the 25th day of the month of Kislev, they rededicated the temple in a ceremony that radiated hope. The priests lit the menorah, a 7-branch lampstand symbolizing God's presence. But they faced a problem. There was only enough consecrated oil for one day. Miraculously, the lamp burned for 8 days, a sign that God had not abandoned his people. This miracle gave birth to the festival of Hanukkah, celebrated to this day as a testament to divine deliverance. But here's a detail that will leave you in awe. As the priests prepared for the rededication, they uncovered a hidden scroll of Daniel's prophecies, tucked away in the temple archives to protect it from Antiochus's purges. Reading aloud the words of Daniel 8:14, they realized that the 2,300 days of desolation had ended exactly as the prophet had predicted. How could a man, centuries dead, have pinpointed the precise moment of their redemption? The crowd wept and sang, their voices rising in a chorus of gratitude. The restoration was more than a physical act. It was a spiritual rebirth, proving that Daniel's visions were a lifeline in their darkest hour. Hanukkah became a symbol of resilience, but it also deepened the Jewish people's trust in Daniel's words. If he had been right about the temple's purification, what else had he foreseen? The answer lay in the rise of a new power, one that would dwarf all previous empires and usher in an era of unprecedented expectation. As the Jewish people celebrated their restored temple, Daniel's prophecies cast a shadow of a coming storm. He had envisioned a series of world empires, each more formidable than the last, culminating in a fourth kingdom, strong as iron, for iron breaks to pieces and shatters all things. Daniel 2:40. This terrifying power emerged in 63 BC, when the Roman general Pompey marched into Jerusalem, bringing Judea under the iron grip of Rome. The Romans were unlike any empire before them. Their legions were disciplined, their roads spanned continents, and their laws reshaped the known world. For the Jews, Roman rule was both a burden and a mystery as they grappled with taxes, foreign governors, and the erosion of their autonomy. Daniel's vision of this fourth kingdom was vivid and chilling. A fourth beast, terrifying and dreadful and exceedingly strong. It had great iron teeth. It devoured and broke in pieces and stamped what was left with its feet. Daniel 7:7. The imagery of iron teeth and crushing power perfectly captured Rome's relentless dominance. From the marble halls of Rome to the dusty streets of Judea, the empire's presence was inescapable. Yet for the Jewish people, Rome's arrival was more than a political shift. It was a sign that Daniel's time of the end was drawing near. His prophecies spoke of a son of man who would receive dominion and glory in a kingdom that all peoples, nations, and languages should serve him. Daniel 7:13-14. Could this be the Messiah they had longed for, the one to free them from Roman oppression? Here's a twist that will make you pause. As Roman officials established their rule in Jerusalem, they encountered Jewish priests who presented them with copies of Daniel's book, pointing to its predictions of their empire's rise. The Romans, pragmatic and skeptical, dismissed the prophecies as superstition, but the Jewish scribes were undeterred. They saw Rome's iron grip as the fulfillment of Daniel's words, and it ignited a feverish expectation. Had the prophet not promised a kingdom that would outlast all others? This hope gave rise to a messianic fervor, with groups like the Pharisees and Essenes studying Daniel's 70 weeks prophecy, Daniel 9:24-27, which outlined a timeline for the coming of an anointed one. The Roman period marked a turning point, setting the stage for the birth of Jesus of Nazareth, who would later call himself the Son of Man and cite Daniel's prophecies, Matthew 24:15. For early Christians, Jesus' life and death aligned with Daniel's timeline, particularly the moment when the Messiah would be cut off, Daniel 9:26. The rise of Rome, far from extinguishing hope, became a catalyst for a new chapter in the unfolding of Daniel's visions, one that would resonate far beyond the hills of Judea. Daniel's influence did not end with the purification of the temple or the rise of Rome. It stretched across centuries, shaping the faith of Jews and Christians alike. His prophecies became a cornerstone of eschatology, the study of the last things, offering a framework for understanding history's ultimate purpose. In the 1st century AD, as Roman rule tightened its hold on Judea, Daniel's words fueled a vibrant messianic hope. The Essenes, a secluded Jewish sect, retreated to the caves near the Dead Sea, copying Daniel's book with meticulous care. Their scrolls, discovered centuries later as the Dead Sea Scrolls, reveal how deeply they believed they were living in the time of the end, foretold by the prophet. But Daniel's reach extended even further. In 70 AD, the Romans under General Titus besieged Jerusalem and destroyed the Second Temple, fulfilling another of Daniel's chilling predictions. The people of the prince who is to come shall destroy the city and the sanctuary, Daniel 9:26. The devastation was catastrophic. Over 1 million Jews perished and thousands were enslaved, their sacred city reduced to rubble. Yet even in this tragedy, Daniel's words offered solace. He had spoken of a time when many of those who sleep in the dust of the earth shall awake, some to everlasting life, and some to shame and everlasting contempt. Daniel 12:2, a promise of resurrection that sustained the Jewish people through their diaspora. Here's a connection that will leave you astonished. Daniel's prophecies not only shaped ancient faith, but also played a role in the modern rebirth of Israel. In the 19th and 20th centuries, Jewish leaders, inspired by biblical promises of restoration, launched the Zionist movement, culminating in the establishment of Israel in 1948. Many saw this as a fulfillment of Daniel's vision of a national resurrection, Daniel 12:2, a sign that history was marching toward its divine conclusion. Even today, Daniel's words about knowledge increasing, many shall run to and fro, and knowledge shall increase, Daniel 12:4, seem eerily prescient in our digital age, where information spreads at the speed of light. Could a prophet from the 6th century BC have foreseen the complexities of our modern world? Daniel's legacy is a tapestry woven through time, from the priests who lit the menorah to the scribes who preserved his words, from the early Christians who saw Jesus as the fulfillment of his visions, to the modern believers who find hope in his promises. His central message, that God reigns sovereign over history, guiding it toward a purpose beyond human understanding, continues to inspire millions. As we navigate a world of geopolitical tensions, technological leaps, and moral challenges, Daniel's prophecies remain a lighthouse, illuminating the path to a future where divine justice prevails. From the miraculous purification of a defiled temple to the iron grip of Rome and the messianic hope that still burns bright, Daniel's prophecies have proven one undeniable truth. History is not a random series of events, but a divine tapestry woven by the hand of God. Centuries after his death, the prophet's words guided a people through exile, persecution, and restoration, and they continue to inspire millions today. Whether it's the flame of Hanukkah, the expectation of a savior, or the modern rebirth of a nation, Daniel's legacy reminds us that no empire, no tyrant, no darkness can thwart the purposes of a sovereign God. His visions are a lighthouse, illuminating the path to a future where hope and justice prevail. So, what struck you the most? Was it the pinpoint accuracy of Daniel's predictions, like the fall of Persia or the rise of Rome? Or perhaps the courage of the Maccabees, fueled by a prophet's ancient words? Do you think Daniel's prophecies still speak to our world today, in an age of rapid change and uncertainty? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear which of these 7 events left you speechless, and why. Your insights make this journey even richer. If this story of Daniel's enduring legacy inspired you, hit that like button to let me know. It means the world. Share this video with friends who love diving into history and faith, and don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications by ringing the bell. We've got more incredible stories coming your way, and I don't want you to miss a single one. Your support keeps this channel thriving, so let's keep exploring the wonders of the past together. Thank you for joining me on this unforgettable journey through the aftermath of Daniel's life. It's been an honor to uncover these shocking events with you, and I can't wait to dive into the next chapter of history together. Until then, stay curious, keep the faith, and I'll see you in the next video. God bless and take care.